Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. This episode of the Grandpa Channel is brought to you by Harris Big H, home of wonderful hamburgers, French fries, onion rings, the magical and medicinal, so I say, root beer freeze. Head to Hires and treat yourself like the legend that you are. Now back to the channel. Hello and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. Today we have an amazing guest. He's like one of the coolest guys that I know. We've known each other for over 10 years. We're sort of brothers from another mother. And Curt Dahl is his name. And I am really looking forward to talking with Curt. Curt is a multi-talented person, and without sounding like this is a eulogy, we'll just, without any further ado. And we're also doing this under some hazardous conditions. You've heard of hot yoga. We're doing hot podcasting. The air conditioner is on the fritz here at the Cobblemore Studios in Sandy, Utah. And so if we have beads of sweat coming down our head, please forgive us. I'm just grateful we're not outside because, I am of Danish and English ancestry. And as Woody Allen would say, I don't tan, I stroke. So maybe this will be very interesting, and I'll give Curt some hazard pay for coming here. Curt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I mean, just to be in the Cobblemore Studios is really an
It's
honor.
amazing.
It's not unlike walking past Abbey Road.
Oh, yeah. I think people will probably come back through, with taxis and stuff. We did that, by the way, when we went to London. We did the shot on Abbey Road. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of ask Curt a couple of questions, and we'll kind of riff and see what happens.
With the riff.
Let's riff with the riffs. Yeah. So here's a question for you. Now, did you know both of your grandpas?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about them a little bit.
So my one grandpa was born in 1899, and so it was always cool that he was born prior to the turn of the century. And it was also very easy to remember how old he was because he was basically the same age as whatever the year was. He worked for Kennecott, which is a, smelting and copper company, and he worked out, in the, how do they know? Yeah, does anybody really know what the grandparents?
That's Johnny Dog.
I don't know where he worked. He worked there forever and ever, but he was always full of life. He was really fun. And my mom, who is also the matron of fun, I know where she got it because my grandmother was not all that fun.
Yeah.
She was quite serious, a school teacher. But my grandpa was very, very fun. We enjoyed being with him. I remember one time in high school, there was a particularly difficult time and I was really upset. Something had happened, and I thought, the only thing that I can do is to kind of settle down is I'm going to go out and visit Grandpa. And so I did. And, it's funny how this was obviously over 50 years ago, but I still remember that I was so worked up about something. I thought, you know what, we need to go out and talk to Grandpa.
Really?
Yeah.
So what did he do that was...
we didn't really talk. We didn't even really talk about what the problem was. It was just kind of like, hey, Grandpa, good to see you. Tell us how things just all.
Yeah.
And I always felt loved there, not like overly loved, but
that wasn't cool.
Well, you know what? And I think that they kind of enjoyed being the empty nesters. And it wasn't like, oh man, can we take care of the grandkids a little more often?
Well, I don't see them more. We just don't see them.
I don't think that was the case.
Yeah.
But so have great memories of my grandpa Beckstead. That was my mom's dad. My grandpa Dahl, on the other hand, for the first 8 years of my life, we lived next door to each other.
Really?
Yeah. And
that sounds like right out of Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah. And you would think, but my grandpa Dahl, very serious, very low patience, very not into grandkids. I mean, yeah, my grandma, his wife, is to this day is one of the saints of my life.
Really?
But him not so much. And even now, my siblings and I will joke because he would call us little sheep herders. That was like as close to an endearment as you could get.
Where's the little sheep herders up to? It almost sounds like a posted.
Just where a bird stick. And then if you were ever in their house, you would always say something like, "What's the inspector doing?" It was like, anyway, he was kind of a grump, and not, we weren't terribly close, but nonetheless, he was my grandpa, and we loved him, and he was a hard worker, and I know that he passed that along to my dad, and so for that I appreciate him. I would say that I had a really warm relationship with him. He died when he was 81. He'd been in a care center for many years, and he got old really fast. Well, and then another thing, he had a tough life. He got Lyme's disease from a tick when he was in his 20s, and he lost his hearing. So he had a hearing aid the whole time that I lived, and that was kind of weird, because old people, when you're young, you look at old people and they're kind of strange anyway, but he had a few more strange things. But I have great respect and admiration for him because, first of all, he was a hard worker, and he and my grandma raised 6 sons who were all pretty darn outstanding.
Oh, good.
And they would say the same thing, that he was not a warm dad, but he taught them how to be successful people.
Tell me about your dad then.
My dad, one of my heroes. I have a wall of fame that is my personal wall of fame that I put people on there who have influenced my life. And of course, my dad is right in the very top. My dad wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth at all, but was a really hard worker. And again, that goes back to where I think he learned from my grandpa. He was a hard worker, and he always expected a lot of himself, but that expecting a lot of himself also came down to the kids. And so my dad always gave me a sense of, can do this. I am better than that. I would come home. There's 2 times I remember specific. I came home with a C-. Well, a C- in our house was like, you have to understand, my older brother was a valedictorian. He was everything all the time. Law school, just brilliant.
Only the best go down.
Well, I know that. Brilliant. But me, I'm not Mr. Academic. I'm just not. And so I came home with a C-. I remember the first time it was in science, and this was in junior high. And he said, "You're better than that. If you were a C- student, I would be happy with this. But you are not a C- student. And you're gonna put that up to an A this next quarter." Well, I knew I needed, what that meant was I prepared to get an A that next quarter. Same thing happened in my history class. And I love history, but I got a C- because I wasn't applying myself. And he said, "You are not a C- student, Dan." And so he would, and literally in those 2 classes where I got C- the next semester, the next quarter, I got A's. And in fact, I got, for Brockbane Junior High School, now I realize
It's a low bar.
I was going to say, take it for what it's worth. Brockbane Junior High School in Magna, Utah, in 8th grade, I got most improved history student. It's right up there on my wall with some of the other things that I really like. But another thing that my dad did is he expected a lot of us, and we knew that, and it was unsaid. But I always figured that the reason I became a writer is because whenever we did something wrong, he would say, "You're going to write a report about that."
Really?
Yeah. And so this was fantastic. So we were in church one day, and we're laughing, and I don't remember what we were laughing about, but somebody's giving the closing prayer, and it's a huge meeting. And my brother and I we're like on the floor in laughter. And my dad has been called to give the closing prayer in this meeting. And we're just down there hooping all. And my mom is embarrassed. My dad is embarrassed. We were, let's see, I probably was 17. We were probably 10 and 11, 10 or 12, somewhere around that area. And we just couldn't hold it in.
Wait, your head is soft.
So we get home, and my dad said, "You are going to write a 500-word theme," he called it Faith Love Reports, "on why you need to be reverent in church." And so my brother, of course, the valedictorian, sets off and he writes his 500. And my dad says, "It's due a week from today." Well, in my house, my nickname was Mr. Play.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how I got that another time, but this was more from my dad. And so my brother has his report turned in. The next Sunday comes up, and my dad says, "Where's your theme?" I said, I didn't quite ever.
Sorry.
I think I had. I probably had about 15 words written, and I would count every word. Because, I didn't want to go flat. That was a wasted effort. And he said, and I thought, well, maybe I can get away with it. And he said, that's great. He says, when you finish with that theme on reverence, he says, you write me another 500-word theme on punctuality.
Really?
And so I write the 500-word theme on punctuality and reverence. Anyway, but like I said, I joke now, and my dad would laugh at this if he was still alive. But, that's why I became the writer, because he gave me all those helps. But my dad was like that. My dad was, and he just lived his life.
Did he have a good sense of humor?
Yeah. I wouldn't say he was like Mr. Fun, but he was, again, very hard worker. I feel like I owe so much of who I become, obviously, to him, because he had such high expectations of us. And that goes from, we lived on the West Side, which is where we live, is really not the upper crust. And he was always like, no, you are better than that. You can make something of yourself. And we did. I'll go back to the Mr. Play thing.
Please.
Again, because it kind of goes to the whole thing about being a hard worker. When we were young and summertime came, there's nothing to do in the summertime if you're a kid, except play. And my dad, before he went to work, and he was so good, he was good at details. I'd be like, that's too much effort. He would write us each a list of things that he wanted us to do before he got home from work that day. That was it. And they'd post them on the refrigerator, and my mom would say, when we wake up, here's your list. It's today. This is what you're supposed to do. And I remember one time, I'll get to the Mr. Play thing, but I remember one time he said, I want all these weeds along this fence dug up. I'm like, it's probably 10 yards long, not that long, 10 yards long.
Seemed like, though.
It seemed like, and so the day came, and you know how it is. You're 10 years old, you're out playing with your friends, and I got maybe 3 feet done. And I'm thinking, boy, you know what? That's asking way too much to get this all done in one day. And so my dad comes home and he goes, I thought these weeds were on your list. Yeah, well, I got this much done. He said, well, what have you been doing for the rest of the day? I said, Dad, it took me that long to do that. He said, no way that took you that long. He said, you watch this. And literally in less than 5 minutes, he had the whole rest of the thing done. He said, don't tell me it's going to take you all day to do this. Well, it really taught me a lesson. He wasn't like mad or angry. He didn't ground me or anything. But he would often come home and he would look at my brother, the valedictorian, look at his list, and it was all checked off, of course. Come home, and he would look at that and he'd go, so what's Mr. Play been up to today? So that's become my
your moniker.
That's my moniker. And so for many, many years, until I got older and was supposed to be a little bit more mature, my license plate said Mr. Play.
Serious? Oh my God.
And so that's kind of my nickname. And you know what? I love it because of the way it came.
Now tell me about your granddaughter. You've told me this, but tell me about your granddaughter.
She's my clone in so many ways. She loves people. She loves the spotlight. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. How you think of me.
What do you think of me?
And and she's incredibly popular and all these things. And in school is kind of like, it's all the extracurricular stuff, which is exactly what it was like goes in, and the whole social part of it. And so the other day, my daughter and her husband, who are fantastic, said to her, she wasn't doing well in school, and they were kind of telling her what she probably needed to do better. And she said to them, why is it that you get mad at me for things that you just laugh when Grandpa tells you what he did them when he was younger? And there's a lot of truth to that. And you know how it is. I love telling my granddaughters about, and I just not granddaughters, 7 granddaughters, about my escapades as a youth. I was fun. I had fun. I was not the model kid that, you'd hold up and say, this kid's going to make so good of his life. But I was having a good time. But again, my dad always had high expectations. And that, I think, rubbed off on me that in what I've done professionally, I feel like I really do have a desire of excellence. And part of that, too, is I think my dad was competitive. And there's been times at work where me and another writer, a good friend of mine, in fact, you may know Steve Wonderman, he and I were often said, go write commercials, and for certain clients, and we'll pick the ones. There's like
I mean, if he therapist, way you're going to pick his scripts around mine. Obviously there are times when they did, but it was like,
But that competitiveness and that desire, which was I can do this and I will do this, I think have been really driving forces in my life that I can just really attribute back to my dad.
That sounds wonderful. Oh, what's your favorite part of being a grandfather to these 7 granddaughters?
That's a really great question. And it really causes some thought because you do what you do and you just kind of do it. But I think if there's a reason behind it, I want them to know that life can be fun. I want them to know that life is going to have everybody's going to have their hard times and they're going to be pretty darn hard, but you can have a positive outlook of certain things. There's a quote that I like in a verse of scripture that says that, and I'll go religious here for a minute, that all your afflictions will be swallowed up in the joy of Christ. And so I think that there's a baseline there that says, you know what, we're all going to suffer, we're all going to have different problems, but in the end, we should have joy. We should be able to say things are going to be okay. And I like being able to do that with my granddaughters. I like telling the stories of when I was growing up, and they laugh. Oh my goodness.
Do you tell them over and over, or they're just one and done?
Well, I'm very happy to say that there are times I says, Grandpa, you've never told me that before.
Serious?
Yeah.
Good.
Oh,
Yeah.
and anyway, now I'm really getting personal here.
Yeah.
So they were over just the other night. They're having a birthday party. So I lit a match and lit the candles, and then I put the match in my mouth while it was still lit. It puts it out, then it puts smoke in your mouth. Having never been a smoker though, but I can pull smoke rings.
Oh, can you? Oh, yes. That's a magnificent talent.
Well, trust me, my granddaughters felt the same way.
Seriously?
They thought that was pretty awesome. Grandpa, you blow smoke rings.
That's something they'll never forget. What they'll tell their kids. Well, if you're not around, but hopefully, all of us are around.
There's we've got it on video because one of the girls was, I guess they think that something's going to happen if Grandpa's around. When I was serving my mission in England, lots of rose bushes over there, and you take one rose petal and you put it right over your hand like this and you smack it like that. It'll make a big pop, or it's like a small firecracker. And so they love me to do that. But then I'll just take the rose petal after I'm done and stick it in my mouth and eat it.
Yeah.
they are edible.
They don't taste bad, but oh my goodness, my granddaughters they think that is like the funniest thing in the world.
What do you think your strengths are? And I'm going to ask you what your kryptonite is here in a minute. So what do you think your strengths are as a grandfather?
I think that I'm pretty optimistic with them. I think that and I'll say this, fun. We'll have sleepovers with our granddaughters, and it's like, one thing we want to do is we want to watch movies. So we'll watch movies. They're not always fun. They're sometimes serious, but if they're coming to our house, they're going to have a good time. And my wife, who is just the angel, nothing is too good for our granddaughters. I mean, she'll put on the spread and everything else, and I'm kind of in charge of the fun. And so
You're bringing the fun.
I'm bringing the fun, and I can do that.
Yeah. So, what do you think what's your kryptonite? What's something that you really struggled with?
This is going to sound really strange, but sometimes your strengths are your weaknesses. And I sometimes think that I'm more optimistic about things. And there are certain things that are really, really serious and it should be taken serious. Mm-hmm. And that perhaps I don't see it. And sometimes I'm so optimistic that I don't look at reality. So I hope that I would hope that my granddaughters will say, yeah, well, Grandpa, that wasn't quite right. They'll give me a little bit.
I mean, they'll cut you a lot of the slack. And my own personal experience is that kids, and I think grandkids, are forgiving if you acknowledge your humanity, towards them.
I have several granddaughters who have unfortunately inherited the anxiety, depression thing. And I feel like I've been open enough about that they understand and that we can talk about it. And that's one of the things also have.
What would you say to them?
Well, I knew that they were having anxiety, and my daughter would go to the doctor and say, and so I would say, you know what, I have that same thing. And I tell them when I kind of felt like I knew it when I first got it and what it felt like and how it feels like. And I tell them every day. I had a granddaughter that said, well, I don't want to take my medication. I said, I don't know why you wouldn't take your medication. She goes, well, I just don't want to take meds. I said, I've taken happy pills for 30 years. Actually, it's longer than that now. I said, and I don't like taking pills, but I like the fact that I'm a better person. I can function because I can take these pills. And I think that helped in taking the medication. So I think, again, just being honest with them and not, just trying to say, hey, you know what? Listen, there's days when I don't feel like getting out of bed.
Like this morning.
And I said, you'll probably never see that because I'm really good at putting on. I'm really good at putting on, but I may go home and just collapse.
The tears of a clown.
The tears of a clown. And it's, and so I'll let them know that they may never see that, but it's there. And we all have our challenges.
So kind of a similar question is, we live in a crazy world with things going on in the Middle East and, nuclear weapons here, there, everywhere, crazy stuff. How do you view your role? It's a little bit of a leading question. Do you view your role as a grandpa as someone to sort of, bring some peace and comfort? If so, how do you do that?
I love, and I don't want this to sound like braggadocio or anything, but I love the fact that my granddaughters know that my foundation really is a spiritual foundation, and that if they really want if they want to talk about something really serious and they want a higher power to be there to help them, they know that they can come and talk about it, because that is such an important part of my life. And so, for example, one of my granddaughters in particular, she's quite spiritual. She's serving a mission right now. And there were times when she would come to me, she says, Grandpa, I'm just really, I look at the world and I'm frightened by it, basically. And I said, you don't need to be frightened of it, because my belief is that Jesus Christ is going to come again. And my belief is that it's going to happen sooner rather than later. My belief is that I'll probably be here. Now, if I'm not, it's not going to throw me or anything. But I said, the good news is it's going to get better. Oh, it can be tough, but we already know who's the winning side. And if we've picked the winning side, then we don't have anything to fear. And then it all goes back to that verse that I shared earlier, that all your afflictions will be swallowed up in the joy of Christ. And so I think that they know that. And I've had the opportunity to serve in my faith, and they've been able to see that. And I think that that's been important to them. And I'm grateful that I have, because, I'm grateful because I think that it helps them to see what it means, how much it means to me.
I think what I tell my kids is, and I feel this way more and more with each passing day, that true peace only comes through Christ. And if you're looking for, other places and sources of peace, good luck. It's temporary, or maybe it's helpful for a while. But I think that that's something that I feel very strongly.
I think that I would do a disservice to my granddaughters if I didn't help them to feel as I feel, so that they know how I feel, so they know that there's challenges in life and that it isn't all easy. I never seemed to be too concerned about it, because he had a foundation or a faith that said, we'll get through this.
I love the idea of what you were talking about, of grandpa's being a fountain of peace, where you could come and dip your cup in and kind of say, hey, I'm scared. What do you think? You've seen more than I have. I know there's rivers, but rivers you've seen more than what I have. But I love that idea of a grandpa being at peace with himself, at peace with God, and then sharing that peace with his grandchildren. And I just think that that's one of the high callings of being a grandpa.
I agree, because a grandfather in most situations will be the pinnacle of wisdom, pinnacle of somebody who's lived life, who should know what's going on and should be able to impart some sage advice. Now, from my standpoint, if you say, let me share some sage advice with you, it's not going to look very fun. But if they see that that's the way that I live my life, then it's like, well, Grandpa, you do this, you do that. How does that happen? What?
Aren't you afraid? That maybe they was.
Yeah,
This is that. How come you're not afraid?
And I love the fact that, and again, I feel like I've got that relationship with my granddaughters, which I'm so grateful for, that they know they can talk about anything. One thing, again, my service in my faith is I've had the opportunity to counsel with a lot of people who've made big mistakes. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, and you know what? There's nothing too big. There's nothing that you've done that's going to hold you back from becoming who you want to become. And it'll be a bump in the road. But again, if they can see that in my everyday life, I hope that they recognize that, okay, well, Grandpa, so when he says something like that, yeah, I believe it.
It reminds me of a little story about my dad. My dad, I held in the absolute high esteem that you did. And I just graduated from law school. I was studying for the bar, and I was kind of freaking out. I didn't think I was going to pass the bar, and I'd take these practice exams, and I was kind of skittish. And I went up to my dad. I'm 3 days before the bar, and it's a 3-day awful period of time. And I said, Dad, and I wonder if I was having like an anxiety attack or something like that. I said, I'm working hard, I'm studying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And he looked at me, and this was very uncharacteristic for my father. He put both of his hands on my shoulders, and he started shaking me, not gently, by the way. And he said to me, you are going to pass the bar. You are, and he scared me straight, and I did. And but it was so uncharacteristic. And years later, I said, do you remember doing that? Because he was a gentle person. And he said, no, I don't remember that, but I remember it vividly. I think that, that it makes, to me, that we have this great responsibility as grandfathers to follow the promptings of the Spirit and to be a force and a source of peace and a force for good. So get off my high horse here.
Well, I'll jump back on that high horse. As I honestly feel that when it is all distilled down to its most pure form, it's all about love. Love is, I feel like Regal Star, peace and love, love is what makes the world go round. That sounds very hippie, but in the most purest form, that's exactly what it is. The reason that I feel I can succeed, because my parents are all gone, and I don't care how old you are when you lose your parents, all of a sudden you feel like, I'm an orphan, I don't have a safety net.
Right.
And it's like, what do you mean you don't have a safety net? You haven't had a safety net? No. There's an emotional or something kind of safety net. And when my dad died, it was like, I don't have my dad to call up and say, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? And it's frightening. But the thing that gets you through, I think, is the fact that you feel love and that there's somebody who believes in you. He may be on the other side, but I know he still loves me. And I know he still believes in me. And then I have the feeling that God above has those same feelings, except in a magnified way. That he knows me, he loves me, and he knows I can do it. When you have somebody who believes in you, you can do wonderful things. And so my responsibility, because I feel like that's something I've learned that I'm really grateful for, my responsibility as a grandfather is to exactly make my granddaughters feel that way. They are loved, and they are supported, and they can do it, and they are believed in. And no matter what it is, they all have different gifts.
Yeah.
But those gifts, man, you make those things happen.
I think that's a wonderful point. And how do you find opportunities to spend time with them? Yeah, spend time with them. Yeah, it's a function of time, isn't it?
There's no question about that. It is a function of time. Now, you might say, well, I don't have a lot of FaceTime with my or they might be far away. Mm-hmm. Guess what? You could text and email. We live in a time when it's easier. I'm blown away by how much a text can mean to someone. It doesn't take very long. But, if I'm thinking about my granddaughter or something, I'll just send a little text and just hope things are going well, think about you, how did this go? Mm-hmm. Or my daughter will send something about one of my granddaughters and they'll be on the friend, we'll start the thread. So I think it's that as I show that I'm interested in them, that goes a long way. Just like, again,
Like if Dad was interested in me, as I feel God is interested in me, I have a lot of desire to say you can trust me.
I think it's interesting too, because if you have a good dad, or if you don't, you do a 180 or a 360, as Carl Malone might say. But you do a 180 and you become the kind of father or grandpa that maybe you didn't have. But I just think that we had this ability.
Yeah, it's like my grandpa Dahl, for one who's serious and
Hard hearing.
hard hearing, not real lovable. But again, as I've gotten older, now when I was younger, I probably didn't feel this way, but as I've gotten older and I see, and I've heard of my dad and his siblings talk about how much his work ethic meant to them, and I can see that how it played out in my life, then I have a great respect for it. And it may not be that lovey, warm feeling that I might have with my other grandpa, but nonetheless, there's something that he distilled in me that I'm grateful for.
I think one of the things that I think about is that I want my kids and my grandkids to be better in any conceivable way than me, and I don't want to feel threatened, and I don't. And so if I have a son or a daughter who really knocks it out of the park financially or, scholastically, man, I just think that's great. And I just think that I can be a cheerleader and I can cheer them on. But I love this idea of just being there and just saying, you could do this. Yes, I'm my dad. You will pass the bar.
If somebody believes in somebody will often ask me, who is your most influential teacher? Well, it takes me a nanosecond to tell you who it was. It was my senior year English teacher, hard teacher. I had known him. I'd never had him as a teacher, but I'd known him from my sophomore year on. He had so much belief in me. I never got A's in his class, but that's not what I took from his class. What I took from his class is this guy believed in me. When I served my mission, he would write me letters. No, not at all. Very, very, we'll say he was agnostic. He had some kind of belief, but it was always about, you could do this. Let me share a story with you about that. Again, kind of goes back to the Mr. Play, trying to get by with this least amount of work.
Smile.
Let's have fun. We were studying philosophy in this humanities English class, like Lauren Johnson. And one of the assignments was to write your philosophy of life. Well, again, I waited till the very last night before.
True to form.
Absolutely true to form. And he's the hardest grader in school, known for it. Yeah. So I write this thing and I thought, well, what can I say? Well, here's what I'll say. My philosophy in life is to take the middle of the road, because that way you don't offend people on this side. You don't offend the people on this side. You just take the middle of the road. You just go through life unscathed. I sent it in. I turned it in. And a couple days later, he passed out all of these assignments back to the people, and except mine. And then everybody gets up and walks out, and I'm like, hey, Warren, where's my, he said, is this yours? It shows me my thing. I said, yeah. He said, that is not your philosophy in life. I know you. That is not your philosophy in life. Now you take this and you go write what your philosophy in life is. I was taken back, and I went back and I wrote, my philosophy in life is you be the leader. You be the person who leads out. You be the person who makes those decisions and those kinds of things. And I don't remember what I got on the grade, but that experience that he said, that isn't who you are. You are so much better than that. I know it. You go tell me what you want to do. It's exactly right. And when somebody believes in you, anytime that I've had somebody in my life who believes in me, it's like I'll move heaven and earth to prove them so that they aren't proven wrong.
And I guess that goes back to one of your concerns too, that strength could be a weakness. If I'm just Pollyanna about you can do this, nothing bad will ever happen to you. But sometimes maybe there needs to be sort of a come to grandpa moment, for lack of a better way to explain it. And just, you're better than this. I mean, if you can do an imitation of your dad.
There's no question about that. As a grandpa, I don't have to do that all that often.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, that falls more on mom and dad, so to speak. But I feel like I always am there as a cheerleader, that when they may be at their lowest point, I can at least be that cheerleader for them, to tell them what I really think of them, which is, you are better than this.
Well, and I think it's a time where you can share a story from your life that, they will just kind of go, that happened to Grandpa, and I can do this. He got through it, sort of, kind of. Yeah.
Well, and again, I think that if you've shared stories with them, as I've tried to share stories with them as they've been growing up, it's just another grandpa story. So they don't tune it out. It's not tuned out as now he's trying to get wise on me. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this is another story I want to listen to.
And I think you build that relationship base where, when you say, we need to talk, where if you got that base, then if you're not just the grumpy grandpa, that they scatter when you're kind of coming into the room, I think that really helps too.
I found that if I'm really interested in them, not just on a high level, but what is it that you are interested in? And you can talk to them about things like that. That also makes all the difference. But it puts the onus on me to know what is it that you are interested in. What do you like? What are the things that are... Now, my wife she is the queen of that. She knows everything that's always going on in their lives. But I have the opportunity then to say, well, tell me about this. And unfortunately, there's several of my granddaughters who are kind of in the creative field, marketing, and one is a singer doing incredible things. And yet I have another granddaughter who's a biochemist major, but I ask her about biochemistry all the time. I have no clue about any of it. I don't even know how to spell it, but I want to know how it's going and what class is she in right now that's hard or easy or...
I think you've given me a lot of things to think about.
Well, I'm not perfect.
No, nor am I, but I mean, I just think that we as grandpas, we can up-level on a constant basis.
How do you want God to treat you?
Kindly, patiently.
I think that if we as grandparents said, I want to treat my granddaughters as God would treat me, with compassion, mercy, and listening, and total acceptance, and that's the role model.
Well, and I suppose that what we want too is we want to see our grandkids as they really are, rather than just some annoying little, pipsqueak. That's tough sometimes. For me, I can be a little bit patient.
I also think it's really important to remember the good times. Now, I realize not everybody maybe would do this, but twice a year I put together a film of one's for Christmas and one is all about our summer vacation that we always take as a family together. And one I modeled after The Office. So it was all like it was The Office, but it was talking about things that we did on our summer vacation. And we're laughing our heads off. And so, again, remembering those times and just laughing a lot is that there's an amazing, amazing bonding that comes when you can laugh. And I love it when they laugh at me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I don't mind being the object of their...
and you know what? They love that.
I tell people that sometimes I'm the human pinata of the family from a human...
And you know what? You will be forever endeared because of that. If somebody says, don't make fun of me, that's like...
I'm grandpa.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah. Now tell us kind of what you're up to in the twilight golden year. We're the same age.
We are septuagenarians. I refuse to learn how to spell that. But I retired full-time from what I did. I was a creative director, and I retired full-time from that about 9 years ago. But I love what I do. I just love what I do. It's who I am. And so I was fortunate enough to have people that would come to me and say, hey, can you help us out on this or help us out on that? So as fate, luck, providence would have it, I've had the opportunity to have quite a few clients. And for whatever reason, I have become kind of a podcast guy. I do a lot of podcasts. That started with doing things for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There was a group from George Washington's Mount Vernon that... said, I understand you're doing these. Could you do some podcasts for us? And so I did a number of series of podcasts for George Washington's Mount Vernon. I'm working on some now that for George Mason University, which are all about the pre-Revolutionary War and things like that. And so 20 years ago, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And now it encompasses my life. I have another client that I get to do work for called Pass It On to billboards, BOTV. I'll share with you this, which is I'm kind of blown away. I'm excited about it. That's why I would share it with you. I wrote a television commercial for them about 3 or 4 years ago that was viewed in the year that it was made, 2.5 billion. Yeah, wow. And they did it in different languages. I'm still kind of like blown away by that. Yeah, it was. But anyway, so one of the things that I've done all of their radio spots, radio campaigns for them. I've been telling them, you should do podcasts. And they said, and so they didn't really jump on it, but I thought, I'll make them a podcast and show them what it can do. And so I wrote it, and they're stories. They're not interviews. They're stories. Now, there are some interviews. We've done interviews with Graham Nash. We've done interviews with Graham Nash, really. Interviews with Captain Kurt, William Shatner. Yeah. And then some others that are less known that are very big in their field. But it's not just a sit down back and forth. They're what we would call an edited podcast, a distorted podcast. So Pass It On, they typically will do these billboards with famous people that have had some kind of value that it's driven their life and made them successful. And so I've been able to do a couple of dozen podcasts for them that focus on people who've made something of their lives. For example, there's a man who was 60 years old, and he ran in the world's longest ultra marathon, which was from Sydney, Australia to Melbourne, Australia. And he was up against these world-class runners, and he shows up in his overalls and gumboots. And all he'd done all of his life is he would herd sheep. He heard them running. So what he did is he ran from Sydney to Melbourne, and he never stopped. These world-class runners would run for 8 hours, and they would rejuvenate. He just kept running, and then he broke the record. He smoked him. Big time. He was 61 years old. Anyway, so stories like that, and it's determination. Pass it on, and that's kind of their tagline for it. And I love what I do. Somebody said, "Well, are you ever going to quit?" I said, "I'll quit when nobody wants me to do it anymore." But I love what I do.
Yeah, I do too. And, it's to take on something like you do, like I do at our advanced, tender years, it's noteworthy, I suppose.
Well, my wife said too the other day, we love asking questions. And so when we ever go on a trip, we take these boxes of questions. And one of them was, have you learned anything in the last several years that surprised you? And she said, well, you've learned how to do all of the audio editing on the computer. Because before, we would hire an editor back in the day. But that's not the way things are now. And so being able to teach yourself how to put together, just like you're learning to put together all of this stuff, it's like, hey, you know what? At 70 years old, I'm pretty happy that it's not necessary.
Yeah. I tell people, and I've told people, kind of counseling people, that I want to go out with a bang instead of a thud. I think that, I have these experiences, as do you, that I think lead to some wise...
Well, look what you're doing right now. I mean, talk about going out with a bang. Not that you're going out.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
But yeah, there's some, people say, well, you're at your prime at this much, If you're not in your prime mentally and all of that, when you get to be our age, then something's wrong. Now, I realize there's some people who have had really tough lives, and they don't, they might have some challenges. But, if people, I think you retire and you die.
Yeah, I do too. There's a one-hit wonder, this right down our alley. Maybe remember the song, Ride, Captain, Ride.
Board the mystery train.
Exactly. And I thought,
what's its name?
It's a one-hit wonder. They were a group based out of Tampa, Florida.
Don't tell me who it is. It's on the Spiral Staircase. Golden Blue Velvet.
Blues.
Oh, Blues Image.
Yes, exactly.
Blues Image.
And so I was thinking that, that I don't want to have my motto as a grandpa. I want it to be Ride, Grandpa, Ride. And I don't want it to be Golf, Grandpa, Golf, or Hide, Grandpa, Hide. And it's something I'm working on.
One thing that you've shared with me, and I love, that your kids and your grandkids, but I think I don't remember whether it was your children or your grandchildren started calling you Ribs.
Yeah, Rivers.
Rivers, yeah, but Ribs for
Ribs, yeah.
And
or I'm also known as the Rib Triever.
Well, you've shared that with me, but again, it's those things that they're personal, and that's what they'll remember that. And the fact that
you can be referred to as that, there's a wonderful connection and a term of endearment.
Yeah, I just think that it's been fun. It's a fun nickname to have.
I also, besides Mr. Play, I have the nickname in my family as Lizard Man.
What?
And so whenever I sign off on a text, I always put the heart and then an icon, an emoji of the heart, and there's an emoji of a lizard. There's a lizard.
So what's the story behind it?
So I also referred to as pass out funny, Grandpa, because there was a time literally when we were laughing as a family. I was laughing so hard, I passed out. So that's referred to as pass out funny in our home. But I also, when I laughed, I did not notice this, but my granddaughters and my daughter, who are really good at pointing these kind of things out, said my tongue looks like a lizard tongue when I laugh.
Lizard Man.
And so I become Lizard Man. And
That's great.
you know, that's when they call me Lizard Man, I love it.
Yeah, you just laugh it up.
Oh,
I play into it. I'm
Yeah.
a retriever, rivulets. You know, we have like 1,001 nicknames. There's a Swedish saying that says, "A much-loved child has many names," and I'm hoping that a much-loved grandpa has many.
I love that. I love that.
So this has been absolutely delightful to be here with my wonderful friend Curt.
Well, can I just say,
We let you going.
is because I do feel like we're brothers from another mother.
Yeah.
And we felt that way from day one. And we've shared many stories together, and we share stories about our childhoods, and because again, growing up at the same time and in kind of the same area in a way, but it's just like being able to sit down and talk to a friend.
That's what I wanted, to have this be that sort of thing.
So when I didn't have, there's nobody I'd rather just sit down and talk to than you.
So it's been fun.
So I've, again, like I said, I can go on and on.
So I guess the closing line might be a grandpa ride, right?
And pass it on.
And fast. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, we're so glad we got you here. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.
It's pretty good, I think.